Hello mọi người, đây là đọc sách. Hôm nay là ngày mùng 3 tháng 4. Đọc tiếp Ready Player One nha. Mm, no, I said, shaking my head. It doesn't. It's even worse than that first Ewok flick, Caravan of Courage. They should have called it Caravan of Suck. Ike rolled his eyes and went back to reading. He wasn't going to take the bait. I eyed the magazine's cover. Hey, can I have a look at that when you're done? He grinned. Why? So you can read the article on Lady Hawk? Maybe. Man, you just love that crab burger, don't you? Blow me egg. How many times have you seen that sub fetch? I know you have made me sit through it at least twice. He was baiting me now. He knew Lady Hawk was one of my guilty pleasures, and that I'd seen it over 2 dozen times. I was I was doing you a favor by making you watch it. No. I shoved a new cartridge into a television console and started up a single-player game of Astromatch. You'll thank me one day. Wait and see. Lady Hawk is canon. Canon was the term we used to classify any movie, book, game, song, or TV show of which Halliday was known to have been a fan. Surely you must be joking. I said, no, I'm not joking. And don't call me Shirley. He lowered the magazine and leaned forward. There's no way Halliday was a fan of Lady Hawk. I guarantee it. What's your proof, dipshit? The man had taste. That's all the proof I need. Then please explain to me why he owned Lady Hawk on both VHS and Laserdiscs. A list of all the films in Halliday's collection at the time of his death was included in the appendix of Anorak Almanacs. We both had the list memorized. The guy was a billionaire. He owned millions of movies, most of which he probably never ever even watched. He had DVDs of Howard the Duck and Crew too. That doesn't mean he liked them, I said, and it's sure as hell doesn't make them canon. It's not really up for debate, Homer, I said. Lady Hawk is an 80s classic. It's fucking lame. It's what it is. The swords look like they were made out of tin foil. And that Star Trek is epically lame. Full of synthesizers and shit by the motherfucking Alan Parsons Project. Lame-orama. Beyond lame. Highland the too lame. Hey. Affectionate. Hurling my television controller at him. Now you're just being insulting. Lady Hawk's cast alone makes the film canon. Roy Batty, Ferris Bueller, and the dude who plays Professor fucking in War Games. I searched my memory for the actor's name. John Wood, reunited with Matty Broderick. A real low point in both of their careers, he said, laughing. He loved arguing about old movies even more than I did. The other gunters in the chat room were now starting to form a small crowd around us to listen in. Our arguments were often high in entertainment value. You must be stoned, I shouted. Lady Hawk was directed by Richard fucking Donner. The Goonies, Superman the movie, you're saying that guy sucks? I don't care if Spielberg directed it. It's a chick flick disguised as a shore and Sosony picture. The only genre film with less balls is probably freaking Legend. Anyone who actually enjoys Lady Hawk is bona fide USDA choice pussy. Laughter from the peanut gallery. I was actually getting a little pissed off now. I was a big fan of Legend too, and I knew it. Oh, so I'm Percy. You're the one with the Ewok fetish. I snatched the Starlock out of his hand and threw it away, and threw it against a Revenge of the Jedi poster on the wall. I suppose to think your extensive knowledge of Ewok culture is gonna help you find an egg. Don't start endurance again, man, he said, holding up an index finger. I've warned you. I will ban your axe. I swear. I knew this was a hollow threat. So what about the push the Ewok thing even further? Maybe give him some crap of referring to them as Endorians. But just then, a new rival materialized on the staircase. A total lemur by the name of Irock. I let out a groan. Irock and Ike attended the same school and had a few classes together. But I still couldn't figure out why Ike had granted him access to the basement. Irock fancies himself an elite gunter, but he was nothing but an obnoxious possessor. Sure, he did a lot of teleporting around the oasis, completing quests and leveling up his avatar, but he didn't actually know anything. And he was always brandishing an oversized plasma rifle the size of a snowball. Even in chat rooms, where it was totally pointless, the guy had no sense of decorum. Was it decorum mean? Cử chỉ lịch thiệp. Đàng hoàng. Are you cooks arguing about Star Wars again? He said, descending the steps and walking over to join the crowd around us. That shit is so played out, yo. I turned to Ike. If you want to ban someone, why don't you start with this clown? I had reset on the television and started another game. Shut your hole, penis vile, Irock replied, using his favorite mispronunciation of my avatar name. He doesn't ban me cause he know I'm elite. Ain't that right, Ike? No, Ike said, rolling his eyes. That ain't right. You're about as elite as my great-grandmother, and she's dead. Screw you, Ike, and your dead grandma. Gee, Irock, I mutter. You always manage to elevate the intelligence level of the conversation. The whole room just lights up the moment you arrive. So sorry to upset you, Captain No Credits. Irock said. Hey, shouldn't you be an incipio panhandling for change right now? He reached for the second television controller. I reached for the second television controller, but I snatched it out and tossed it to Ike, who scowled at me. Prick. Possessor? Possessor? Pansy is calling me a possessor? He turned to address the small crowd. This chump is so broke that he has to pump rides to Greyhawk just so he can kill kobolds for copper piece. And he's calling a possessor. This elicited a few snickers from the crowd, and I felt my face turn red under my visor. Once, about a year ago, I made the mistake of hitching a ride of war with IROC to try to get a few experience points. After dropping me in a low-level quest area on Greyhawk, the joke had followed me. I spent the next few hours slaying a small band of kobolds, waiting for them to respawn, and then slaying them again over and over. My avatar was still only first level at the time, and it was one of the only safe ways for me to level up. I had taken several screenshots of my avatar that night, labeled them Penny's Vow, the Mighty Kobold Slayer. Then he posted them to the hatchery. He still broke it up every chance he got. He was never going to let me live it down. That's right, I call you a Poseur. I stood and got up in his grill. You're an ignorant know-nothing twink. Just because you're 14 level, it doesn't make you a gunter. You actually have to possess some knowledge. Word, said, nodding his agreement. He pumped fist, more stickering from the crowd, now directed at IROC. IROC glared at us a moment. Okay, let's see who the real Poseur is, he said. Check this out, girls. Grinning, he produced an item from his inventory and held it up. It was an old Atari 2600 game. Still in the box. He purposefully covered the game's title with his hand, but I recognized the cover artwork anyway. It was a painting of a young man and woman in ancient Greek attire, both brandishing swords. Looking behind them were a minotaur and a bearded guy with an eye patch. Know what this is, Hotshot? Arok said, challenging me. I'll even give you a clue. It's an Atari game released under part of a contest. It contains several puzzles, and if you solve them, you could win a prize. So familiar? Arok was always trying to impress us with some clue or piece of holiday lore he foolishly believed he'd been the first to uncover. Gunters love to play the game of one-upmanship and were constantly trying to prove they had acquired more skill knowledge than everyone else. But I totally suck at it. You're joking, right? I said. You just now discovered the Swordquest series? I deflated. You're holding Swordquest Earthworld. I continued. The first game in the Swordquest series, released in 1982. I smiled wide. Can you name the next 3 games in the series? His eyes narrowed. He was, of course, stumped. Like I said, he wasn't total Poseur. Anyone else? I said, opening the question up on the floor. The gunters in the crowd eyed each other, but no one spoke up. Fire world, water world, and air world. I answered. Bingo, I said, and we pumped fists again. Although air world was never actually finished, because Atari fell on hard times and cancelled the contest before it was complete. I quietly put the game box back in his inventory. You should join up the successor, I said, laughing. They could really use someone with your vast story of knowledge. I flipped him the bird. If you 2 facts already knew about the Swordquest contest, how come I've never once heard you mention it? Come on, I said, shaking his head. Swordquest Earthworld was Atari an unofficial sequel to Adventure. Every gunter worth their salt know about the contest. How much more obvious can you get? Harold tried to save some face. Okay, if you was such experts who program all the Soul Quest game, Dan Hitchens and Todd Fry, I receded. Try asking me some difficult. I got one of you. Uh, interjected. What were the prize after we gave after the winner of each contest? And I said, good one, let's see. The prize the prize for the Earth War contest was the talisman of penultimate truth. It was solid gold and encrusted with diamonds. The kid who won it melted it down to pay for college, as I recall. Yeah, I prodded. Quit stealing. What about the other two? Stealing. What is stealing? Stealing. Đinh chết. I'm not stalling. The firework prize was the Chalice of Light, and the World War prize was supposed to be the Crown of Life, but it was never awarded due to the cancellation of the contest. Same goes for the Air War prize, which was supposed to be a philosopher's stone. I grinned and gave me a double high five, then added, and if the contest hadn't been cancelled, the winners of the first 4 rounds would have competed for the grand prize, the sword of the ultimate sorcery. I nodded. The prizes were all mentioned in the Sword Quest comic books that came with the games. Comic books which happened to be visible in the treasure room in the final scenes of Aragorn's invitation. By the way, the crowd burst into applause. Aragorn lowered his head in shame. Since I became a gunter, it had been obvious to me that Halliday had drawn inspiration for his contest from the Sword Quest contest. I had no idea if he borrowed any of the puzzle of them too, but I studied the game and the solutions thoroughly just to be safe. Fine, you win, Aragorn said, but your most obvious needs to get alive. And you, I said, obviously need to find a new hobby, because you clearly lack the intelligence and commitment to be a gunter. No doubt, I said. Try doing some research for a change. I mean, did you ever heard of Wikipedia? It's free, douchebag. Irok turned and walked over to the long boxes of comic books stuck on the other side of the room, as if he would lost interest in the discussion. Whatever, he said over his shoulder. If I didn't spend so much time offline, getting laid, I probably know just as much worthless shit as you two do. I ignored him and turned back to me. What were the names of the twins who appear in the Sword Quest comic books? Tara and Thor. Damn, Z, you're the man. Thanks, Ag. A message flashed on my display, informing me that the 3-minute warning bell had just rung in my classroom. I knew Ag and I wrote were seeing the same warning, because our schools operate on the same schedule. Time for another day of higher learning, Ag said, standing up. Drag, Ag said. See you losers later. He gave me the finger. Then his avatar disappeared as he logged out of the chat room. The other gunters began to log out and vanish too, until only Ike and I remained. Seriously, Ike, I said, why do you let that moron hang out here? Because it's fun to beat at video games, and his ignorance gives me hope. How so? Because if most of the other gunters out there are as clueless as Aarok, and they are, Z, believe me, that means you and I really do have a shot at winning the contest. I struck. I guess that's one way to look at it. Wanna hang after school again tonight? Around 7 or so? I've got a few errands to run, but then I'm gonna tackle some of the stuff on my need to watch list. A spy marathon, perhaps? Oh, hell yes, I said. Count me in. We lock out simultaneously, just as the final bell begins to ring. And that's chapter 3. Đọc bỏ hết cả mồm. Oh, it's 20 minutes. Okay, let me bring some water. So exhausted. Oh my god. Oh man. What? A live stream. What are you doing? Huh? Wait. I'm still alive? What are you doing? Huh? Okay. Okay, I'm still okay. Wait. I'm still alive? Okay.
Okay.
What are you doing? Huh? Okay.
Okay, so we continue. We continue to live. Okay. Okay. We're still connected. Okay, so we continue. We continue to live. Okay. Oh my god. Okay, okay. We're still connected. Okay, okay, okay. Oh my god. So confused. Um, so for the chapter 4, my avatar's eyes slid open, and I was back in my world history classroom. The seats around me were now filled with other students, and our teacher, Mr. Avinovich, was materializing at the front of the classroom. Mr. A's avatars look like a porty bearded college professor. Hmm. He spotted an infectious grin, wide rim spectre, and tweed jacket with patch on the elbows. When he spoke, he somehow always managed to sound like he was reading a passage from Dickens. I liked him. He was a good teacher. Of course, we didn't know who Mr. Avenovich really was or where he lived. We didn't know his real name, or even if he was really a man. For all we knew, he could have been a small Inuit woman living in Anchorage, Alaska, who had adopted his appearance and voice to make her students more receptive to her lesson. But for some reason, I suspected that Mr. Abramovich avatar looked and sounded just like the person operating it. All of my teachers were pretty red, unlike their real-world counterparts. Most of the Oasis public school teachers seems to genuinely enjoy their job, probably because they didn't have to spend half their time acting as babysitter and disciplinarians. The Oasis software took care of that, ensuring that students remained quiet and in their seats. All the teachers had to do was teach. It was also a lot easier for online teachers to hold their students' attention, because here in the Oasis, the classroom were like holodecks. Teachers could take their students on a virtual field trip every day, without ever leaving the school ground. During our world history lesson that morning, Mr. Avenovich loaded up a standalone simulation so that our class could witness the discovery of King Tut's tomb by archaeologists in Egypt in 1922. The day before, we visited the same spot in 1334 BC and before century and had seen Tutankhamun's empire in all its glory. In my next day, biology, we traveled through a human heart and watched it pumping from the inside, just like in that old movie Fantastic Voyage. In art class, we taught the lover, while all of our avatars were silly parrots. In my astronomy class, we visited each of Jupiter's moons. We stood on the volcanic surface of Io while our teacher explained how the moon had originally formed. As our teacher spoke to us, Jupiter loomed behind her, filling half the sky, its red spot churning slowly just over her left shoulder. Then she snapped her fingers, and we were standing on Europa, discussing the possibility of extraterrestrial life beneath the moon's icy crust. I spent my lunch period sitting on one of the green fields bordering the school, staring at the stimulated scenery while I munched on a protein bar with my visor on. It beat staring at the inside of my hideout. I was a senior, so I was allowed to go off work during lunch if I wanted to, but I didn't have that kind of spare duff to blow. Walking into the oasis was free, but traveling around inside it wasn't. Most of the time, I didn't have enough credits to teleport off-world and get back to Lotus. When the last bell rang each day, the students who had things to do in the real world would log out of the oasis and vanish. Everyone else would head off-world. A lot of kids own their own interplanetary vehicles. School parking lots all overloaded were filled with UFOs, TIE fighters, or NASA space shuttle, Viper from Battlestar Galactica, and other spacecraft designed lifted from every sci-fi movie and TV show you can think of. Every afternoon I would stand on the school front lawn and watch with envy as these ships filled the sky, zooming off to explore the simulation's endless possibilities. The kids who didn't own ships would either hitch a ride with a friend or stampede to the nearest transport terminal, headed for some off-world dance club, gaming area, or rock concert. But not me. I wasn't going anywhere. I was stranded on Ludus, the most boring planet in the entire oasis. The ontologically anthropocentric sensory immersive simulations was a big place. When the Oasis had first been launched, it contained only a few hundred planets for users to explore, all created by GSS programmers and artists. Their environments ran the gamut from sword and sorcery settings to cyberpunk themed planet-wide cities to irradiated post-apocalyptic zombie-infested wasteland. Some planets were designed with painstaking details. Others were randomly generated from a series of templates. Each one was populated with a variety of artificially intelligent NPC, computer-controlled humans, animals, monsters, aliens, and androids with which iOS users could interact. GSS has also licensed persisting virtual worlds from their competitors, so content that had already been created for gamers like EverQuest and World of Warcraft was ported over to the Oasis, and copies of Norath and Azeroth were added to the growing catalog of Oasis planets. Other virtual worlds soon followed suit, from the Metaverse to the Matrix. The Firefly universe was enthralled in the sector adjacent to the Star Wars galaxy, with a detailed recreation of the Star Trek universe in the sector adjacent to that. Users could now teleport back and forth between their favorite fictional worlds: Middle-earth, Vulcan, Pern, Arrakis, Magathera, Discworld, Midworld, Riverworld, Ringworld, Worlds Upon Worlds. For the, s- for the sake of zoning and navigation, the oasis had been divided equally into 27 cube-shaped sectors, each containing hundreds of different planets. The three-dimensional map of all 27 sections distinctly resembled an 80s puzzle toy called Rubik's Cube. Like most hunters, I knew this was no coincidence. Oh my god. Each sector measured exactly 10 lakh hours across, or about 10.8 billion kilometers. So, if you were traveling, so if you were traveling at the speed of light, the fastest speed attainable by any spacecraft inside the oasis, you could get from one side of a sector to the other in exactly 10 hours. That sort of long distance travel wasn't cheap. Spacecraft that could travel at light speed were rare, and they require fuel to operate. Charging people for virtual fuel to power their virtual spaceship was one of the ways GSS generated revenue, since accessing the oasis was free. Ah, but GSS' primary source of income came from teleportation fares. Teleportation was the fastest way to travel, but it was also the most expensive. Traveling around inside the oasis wasn't just costly, it was also dangerous. Each sector was divided up into many different zones that varied in size and shape. Hmm. Some zones were so large that they encompassed several planets, while others covered only a few kilometers on the surface of a single world. Each zone had a unique combination of rules and parameters. Magic would function in some zones and not in others. The same was true for technology. If you flew your technology based starship into a zone where technology didn't function, your engine would fall the moment you crossed the zone border. Oh, then you have to hire some silly gray-bearded sorcerer with a spell-powered space barge to tow your ass back into a technology zone. Dual zones permitted the use of both magic and technology, and noon zones didn't allow either. There were pacifist zones where no player versus player combat was allowed, and PvP zones where it was every avatar for themselves. You had to be careful whenever you enter a new zone or sector. You had to be prepared. But like I said, I didn't have that problem. I was stuck at school. Ludus had been designed as a play of learning, so the planet had been created without a single quest, portal, or gaming zone anywhere on its surface. The only thing to be found here were thousands of identical school campuses separated by rolling green fields, perfectly landscaped parks, rivers, meadows, and sprawling template-generated forests. There was no castle, dungeons, or orbiting space fortresses for my avatar to raid. And there were no NPC villains, monsters, or aliens for me to fight. So there was no treasure or magic item for me to plunder. This totally sucked, for a lot of reasons. Completing quests, fighting NPCs, and gathering treasure were the only ways a low-level avatar like mine could earn experience points. Earning XP was how you increase your avatar's power level, strengths, and abilities. A lot of Oasis users didn't care about their avatar power level or bother with the gaming aspects of the simulation at all. They only used the Oasis for entertainment, business, shopping, and hanging out with their friends. These users simply avoided entering any gaming or PvP zones where their defenseless first level avatar could be attacked by NPCs or by other players. If you stayed in safe zones like Ludus, you didn't have to worry about the avatar getting robbed, kidnapped, or killed. I hated being stuck in a safe zone. If I was going to fight Holiday's egg, I knew I would eventually have to venture out in the dangerous sector of the oasis. And if I wasn't powerful or well armed enough to defend myself, I wasn't going to stay alive for very long. Over the past 5 years, I managed to slowly, gradually raise my avatar up to third level. This hadn't, this hadn't been easy. I'd done it by hitching rides of pens, a hitching ride of war, hitching rides of war with other students, mostly Ike, who happened to be headed to a planet where my Woods avatar could survive. I I have I have them drop me near a newbie level gaming zone and spend the rest of the night on weekends slaying orcs, kobolds, or some other piddly class of monster that was too weak to kill me. For each NPC my avatar defeated, I would earn a few meager experience points and usually a handful of copper or silver coins dropped by my slain foes. These coins were instantly converted to credits, which I used to pay the teleportation fare back to Ludus, often just before the final school bell rang. Sometimes, but not often, one of the NPCs I killed would drop an item. That was how I obtained my avatar's sword, shield, and armor. I stopped hitching rides with Ike at the end of the previous school year. His avatar was now above 30th level, and so he was almost always headed to a planet where it wasn't safe for my avatar. He was happy to drop me on some nook world along the way, but if I didn't earn enough credits to pay for my fare back to Ludus, I'd wind up missing school because I was stuck on some other planet. This was not an acceptable excuse. I now racked up so many an excuse absence that I was in danger of being expelled. If that happened, I would have to return my school issues Oasis console and visor. Worse, I'd be transferred back to school in the real world to finish out my senior year there, so I couldn't risk that. So these days I rarely left Ludus at all. I was stuck here and stuck at third level. Having a third level avatar was colossal embarrassment. None of the other gunters took you seriously unless you were at least 10th level. Even though I've been a gunter since day one, everyone still considered me a noob. It was beyond frustrating. In desperation, I tried to find a part-time after-school job just to earn some walking around money. I applied for dozens of tech support and programming jobs, mostly grunt construction work, coding parts of Oasis Mall and office building. But it was completely hopeless. Millions of college-educated adults couldn't get one of these jobs. The Great Recession was now entering its third decade. and unemployment was still a record high. Even the fast food joint in my neighborhood had a 2-year waiting list for job applicants. So I remained stuck at school. I feel like a kid standing in the world's greatest video arcade without any quarters, unable to do anything but walk around and watch the other kids play. It's so sad for him. Like he should do something to like oh, wait for me to turn up the light. So I think it's hard. It's really hard. Mm. 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 But if you ever been so grateful, oh my god. I'm wrongly said, so don't get me wrong. Um, you're the best. Just chill. How can you borrow the our history? Uh, you will you will not study this this course because you heard that you can bring the vouching. If you were our sin. Mm, 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 if our sin. Uh, huh. Hmm. So I have to record 10 more minutes. Okay, let's continue. Mm, after lunch, I hit it. Oh, after lunch, I headed to my favorite class, Advanced Oasis Studies. This was a senior year elective where you learn about the history of the Oasis and its creator. Talk about an easy A. For the past 5 years, I've devoted all of my free time to learning as much as I possibly could about James Holidays. I would exhaustively study his life, accomplishment, and interests. Over a dozen different Holiday biographies had been published in the years since his death, and I read them all. Several documentary films had also been made about him, and I studied those too. I would study every word Halliday had ever written, and I would play every video game he'd ever made. I took notes, writing down every detail I thought might be related to the hunt. I kept everything in a notebook, which I started to call my real diary after watching the third Indiana Jones film. The more I learned about Holliday's life, the more I wrote to idolize him. He was a good among geeks, a nerd, uber deity on the level of Geax, Garriott, and Gates. He left home after high school with nothing but his wits and his imaginations, and he used them to attain worldwide fame and amass a vast fortune. He had created an entirely new reality that now provided an escape for most of humanity. And to top it all off, he turned his last will and testament into the greatest video game contest of all time. I spent most of my time in advanced Oasis studies class annoying our teacher, Mr. Cedars, by pointing out errors in our textbook and raising my hand to interject some relevant bit of holiday trivia that I, and I alone, thought was interesting. After the first few weeks of class, Mr. Cedar had stopped calling on me unless no one else knew the answer to his question. Today, he was reading excerpts from The Eggman, a best-selling holiday biography that I'd already read 4 times. What excerpt? What is excerpt? Excerpt là trích đoạn. And to top it off, he turned his last will and testament into. I spent during his lecture. I kept having to resist the urge to interrupt him and point out all of the really important details of the book I left out. Instead, I just made a mental note of each omission, and as Mr. Cedars began to recount the circumstance of Holiday's childhood, I once again tried to glean whatever secrets I could from the strange way Holiday had lived his life, and from the odd clues about himself to choose to leave behind. James Donovan Holiday was born on June 12, 1972, in Middletown, Ohio. He was an only child. His father was an alcoholic machine operator and his mother was a bipolar waitress. By all accounts, James was a bright boy, but socially inept. He had an extremely difficult time communicating with the people around him. Despite his obvious intelligence, He did poorly in school because most of his attention was focused on computers, comic books, sci-fi and fantasy novels, movies, and above all else, video games. One day in junior high, Holiday was sitting alone in the cafeteria, reading a Dungeons and Dragons player's handbook. The game fascinated him, but he'd never actually play it because he'd never had any friends to play it with. A boy in his class named Ogden Morrow noticed that Halliday was reading and invited him to attend one of the weekly D&D gaming sessions held at his house. There, in Morrow's basement, Halliday was introduced to an entire group of mega geeks just like himself. Là đồng đội đúng không? They immediately accepted him as one of their own, and for the first time of his life, James Halliday had a circle of friends. Ogden Morrow eventually became Halliday's business partner, collaborator, and best friend. Many would later liken the pairing of Morrow and Halliday to that Jobs and Wozniak or Lennon and McCarthy. It was a partnership destined to alter the course of human history. Destined định mệnh. It was a partnership destined to alter the course of human history. Thay đổi tiến trình của lịch sử nhân loại à? Kinh quá nhỉ. At age 15, Halliday created his first video game, Ragnarok Quest. He programmed it in BASIC on a TRS-80 color computer he received the previous Christmas. Thought he'd ask his parents for the slightly more expensive Commodore 64. Ragnarok Quest was an adventure game set in Catonia, the fantasy world Halliday had created for his high school Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Ragnarok was a nickname Halliday had been given by a female British exchange student at his high school. He liked the name Anurag so much that he used it for his favorite D&D character, the powerful wizard who later appeared in many of his video games. Halliday created Anurag Quest for fun, to share with the guys in his D&D gaming group. They all found the game addictive and lost countless hours attempting to solve its intricate riddles and puzzles. Ogden Morrow convinced Halliday that Anurag Quest was better than most of the computer games currently on the market, and encouraged him to try selling it. He helped Halliday create some simple cover artwork for the game, and together the two of them hand-copied Anurag Quests onto dozens of the inch floppy disks and stuck them into Ziploc bags along with a single photocopy sheet of instructions. They began selling the game on the software rack at their local computer store. Before long, they couldn't make copies fast enough to meet the demand. Morrow and Halliday decided to start their own video game company, Gregarious Games, which initially operated out of Morrow's basement. Halliday programmed new version of Anurag Quest for the Atari XL, Apple II, and Commodore 64 computers, and Morrow began placing ads for the game in the back of several computer magazines. Within 6 months, Anarok Quest became a national bestseller. Halliday and Morrow almost didn't graduate from high school because they spent most of their senior year working on Anarok Quest 2, and instead of going off to college, they both focused all of their energy on their new company, which had now grown too large for Morrow's basement. In 1990, Gregarious Games moved into its first real office, located in a rundown strip mall in Columbus, Ohio. Over the next decade, the small company took the video game industry by storm. The small company took the video game industry by storm, releasing a series of best-selling action and adventure games, all using a groundbreaking first-person graphic engine created by Halliday. Gregarious Games set a new standard for immersive gaming, and every time they released a new title, it pushed the envelope of what seemed possible on the computer hardware available at the time. Oh yeah, I know it. I know it hard to remember. The rotund Arden Morrow was naturally charismatic, and he handled all of the company's business affairs and public relations. At every Gregarious Games press conference, Morrow grinned infectiously from behind his unruly beard and wide-rimmed spectacles, using his natural gift for hype and hyper. Halliday seems to be Morrow's polar opposite in every way. He was tall, gaunt, and painfully shy, and he preferred to stay out of the limelight. People employed by various games during this period say that Halliday frequently locked himself in his office, where he programmed incessantly, often going without food, sleep, or human contact for days or even weeks. On the few occasions that Halliday agreed to do interviews, his behavior came off as bizarre, even by game designer status. He was hyperkinetic, aloof, and so socially inept that the interviewers often came away with the impression that he was mentally ill. Halliday tended to speak so rapidly that his words were often unintelligible, and he had a disturbing high-pitched laugh, made even more so because he was usually the only one who knew what he was laughing about. When Halliday got bored during an interview or conversation, he would usually get up and walk out without saying a word. Halliday had many well-known obsessions. Chief among them were classics, video games, sci-fi and fantasy novels, and movies of all genres. He also had an extreme fixation on the 1988, the decade running during which he'd been a teenager. Halliday seems to expect everyone around him to share his obsessions, and he often lashed out at those who didn't. He was known to fire long-time employees for not recognizing an obscure line of movie dialogue he quoted, or if he discovered they weren't familiar with one of his favorite cartoons, comic books, or video games. Arden Morrow would always hire the employee back, usually with a Halliday even noticing. As the years went on, Halliday's already stunned social skills seemed to deteriorate even further. Oh, seems like it's too bad. Hmm, Several exhaustive psychological studies were done on Holiday following his death, and his obsessions, adherence to routine, and preoccupation with a few obscure areas interest led many psychologists to conclude that Halliday has suffered from Asperger's syndrome or from some other form of high-functioning autism. Despite his despite his eccentricities, no one ever questioned eccentricities. Eccentricity. Eccentricity. Người khác thường. Eccentricity. No one ever questioned Halliday's genius. The games he created were addictive and widely popular. By the end of the 20th century, Halliday was widely recognized as the greatest video game designer of his generation, and some would argue of all time. Ogden Morrow was a brilliant programmer in his own right, but his true talent was his knack for business. In addition to collaborating on the company's game, he masterminded all of their early marketing campaigns and shareware distribution schemes with astounding results. When Gregarious Games finally went public, their stock immediately shot into the stratosphere. What is stratosphere? Tầng bình lưu à? Mẹ, có vẻ khó đấy. Stratosphere. By their 13th birthdays, Halliday and Morrow were both multimillionaires. They purchased mansions for the same street. Morrow bought a Lamborghini, took several long vacations, and traveled the world. Halliday bought and restored one of the original DeLoreans used in the Back to the Future films, continued to spend nearly all of his time wedded to a computer keyboard, and used his newfound wealth to amass what would eventually become the world's largest private collection of classic video games, Star Wars action figures, vintage lunchbox, and comic books. At the height of its success, Gregarious Games appeared to fall dormant. Several years elapsed during which they released no new games. Morrow made cryptic announcements, saying the company was working on an ambitious project that would move them in an entirely new direction. Rumors began to circulate that Gregarious Games was developing some sort of new computer gaming hardware, and that this secret project was rapidly exhausting the company's considerable financial resources. There were also indications that both Halliday and Morrow had invested most of their own personal fortunes in the company's new endeavor. Word began to spread that Gregarious Games was in danger of going bankrupt. No way. No way they're going to bankrupt. Then, in December 2012, Gregarious Games rebranded itself as Gregarious Simulation System, and under this new banner they launched their flagship product, the only product GS would ever release, the Oasis, the ontologically anthropocentric sensory immersive simulations. Wow, incredibly.
incredible. Rồi và đây là phần 19 của Ready Player One. Cảm ơn các bạn đã lắng nghe. Goodbye.